What is up, fight nerds and dirty gamblers? I am Erik. This is Erik Bets Fights. Welcome back, y'all. It's Friday already. Fights are like 24 hours away. I don't even know what time they start tomorrow, but probably around 24 hours away anyway. But yeah, we're going to do our full card breakdown for UFC Vegas 65, headlined by a heavyweight tilt between Derrick Lewis and Serghei Spivac, the man with 14 different spellings of his name. I was trying to find a picture of Serghei Spivac to use. There's certain pictures on UFC.com that I always use for my thumbnails for these videos. And I couldn't find the Serghei Spivac one, and it was because I was using the incorrect spelling of his name. So I had to go to UFC.com and look at, well, what spelling do they use? And then I was able to find it. Anyway, folks, thanks for stopping by. Like I said, it's already Friday. I usually get this video out by Wednesday. I'm not going to get into, I'm always complaining about how I don't have time, right? Yeah, the week got away from me a little bit. It's been with my job. We're especially busy around the holidays because a lot of um, I work for a trivia company. I write trivia questions, and where a lot of companies do like trivia holiday parties for their employees. So we get busy. So we kind of were busy this week. But anyway, I'm glad I was kept telling myself, like, I'm going to get it out Wednesday. I'm going to get it out Thursday. Now it's Friday. Technically, I'm in the middle of my work day right now, but I'm going to squeeze this one in. I'm going to try to do a quick one. I did an hour and a half last week. Not planning on doing that this week. There are a few fights that I don't really have that much to say about, and I did have to rush some of my research this week. So, I just generally speaking, I probably don't have as much for you as far as the breakdowns, but that's good because we're going to kind of go quick anyway. But let's start out with a recap of how the last event went. It actually went pretty darn well. It picked up, if we look at the bottom here, 3.14 units at 26% ROI. We'll just start at the top and go through the bets quick. I did. I did do a unit on Frankie Edgar. I thought, watching the tape, like I wasn't as sold on the idea of him being super washed as some other folks were. I thought, yeah, he's been knocked out a couple times, but he looked pretty good in the Cheeto fight, I thought. But yeah, it was clear in this fight that his chin's probably pretty much gone. I mean, he's gone anyway. But farewell to a legend. I remember I've been watching Frankie Edgar a long time. I remember watching him, and I think it was against Gray Maynard. I can't remember, but I was watching at this bar in Moorhead, Minnesota when I was living there, and I remember having this moment where I was like, this guy's the future of the division. This is when he was fighting at lightweight, mind you. So it's hilarious that now he's fighting at 135 and he's undersized there, and the man was a world champion at 155. So that's pretty crazy. I thought 2-1 on him was pretty good value, so I went for it. Obviously, we didn't get that one. Daniel Hooker. I was proud of myself for how I handled that. I bet him at minus 152 when I finished the tape, and then his number got even better. So I bet him again because I kept thinking, like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, and this was another situation where I guess I think that Hooker being that good of a line was based on, obviously his last performance against Arnold Allen. He got knocked out pretty quickly, but there were a lot of extenuating circumstances there. He was down to 145. Plus, I didn't think he looked super fragile in that fight. A lot of people did. I didn't think he did. I think he just took some hard shots from a hard puncher and got put out. But so yeah, I think people are like overselling the narrative that Hooker is shot, and I really think, I was like, I think he should be at least like minus 200 here, because it was one of those situations where I was like, what's Polish really going to do to him? And I mean, he did have some spots in round one where he was looking for that knee bar, and it did look a little hairy there for a little bit, but I was like, I don't think Polish is going to be able to take him down consistently. I don't think he's going to be able to hold him down. I don't think he's going to be able to do well standing with him, and all of that played out. Like Polish ended up being uh basically ended up, you know, why can't I? Like desperate. Why couldn't I think of that word? I hate it when that happens. But it was like, desperate. He's Imanari rolling. He's desperately shooting for takedowns, doing anything he can. I mean, it was like Ryan Hall. Like it was literally like, what he's trying to do. He knows he has nothing in the stand up, and he's just going to try to get to the ground. So when that number moved to minus 145, I took another shot on it. So I was able to pick up 2 units there. That ended up being one of those spots where I was like, man, I wish I would have fired like 7 units or something, because I was confident that that line was inaccurate. But I also was like, weird crap happens, especially because I'm not saying Hooker is in his prime. I mean, I do think that he has faded some. I don't think he's shot, but I was like, I don't know how much he's faded, so I don't want to get too crazy here. And I did bet Moicano at minus 120. I was really happy with how that one turned out. And then once we get down here, we'll see. I also bet Moicano by sub in round one. I took a shot on Silvana Gomez Juarez. That was a bad bet. She didn't look particularly good there. Frivola, going on to the Props and parlays. Frivola, a Zaitar under 2.5 rounds, -170. Like, I don't know. That's kind of a big price to take for that, but I felt like it was pretty fair and it did come through. Alberg Negamarianu over 1.5. I really thought that was going to end up being kind of a slow paced affair and they'd get over 1.5. We didn't make it there. I did parlay a couple of big favorites here in Blanchfield and Jackson. They came through. We pick up a unit there. Poirier Chandler over 1.5 at -130. We pick up a unit. So yeah, Moicano by sub. I was gonna just bet Moicano by sub straight up. I can't remember. The number was like maybe plus 350 or something. It wasn't a great number, but and then I looked through his record and I saw Moicano has never won by sub after round two. All of his sub wins are in round one or round two. And those are at plus 1100 and plus 1500 respectively. So I was like, well, I'm just going to put a little sprinkle on the round one and the round two so I can get these big numbers. And yeah, he came through in round one. So I was able to pick up 1.1 units out of just a 0.1 unit bet. So that was cool. I did take a sprinkle on McCann by TKO. Obviously, that didn't come together so well. And then I took a sprinkle on a Zaitar by KO round one plus 350. That one didn't come through. But yeah, 3.14 units at 26%. I needed that win. I'd been sliding for a while. Yeah, taking a look here at, I've definitely showed this before. When I started out, I was climbing, and now it's been I don't know, this was like probably back in March or something, and it's pretty much just been like a lot of sideways, not really. So I I started tracking in October of last year, and I won like 45 units or something in 2021 in just October, November, December. So I picked up like 45 units in 3 months. So I was like, oh man, that I had some beginner's luck basically. I was like, oh, I should be able to pick up like 100 units in 2022. I'm going to make that my goal. And what have I done instead? I've pushed sideways and picked up I'm only up like 12 to 15 units. I shouldn't say only. I mean, a win's a win. A lot of, winning money is good. Having a winning record is good. A lot of cappers are down on this year, even some very solid long time cappers are only doing about as well as I'm doing. So I'm not going to complain about being up 12 to 15 units, but yeah, I definitely was hoping to do better this year, but I still got a little time to pick up a few more, and I'm feeling good about the bets I've got on this card, so we might be able to pick a few units here. But anyway, let's go ahead and bust into these breakdowns. Like I said, so I'm going to keep some of these really short for the most part. First up, we've got Natalia Silva versus Teresa Bleda. Silva favored at -185, Bleda at +150. I think that's still fairly accurate. I say this every time, but Tapology is always a little behind on their odds. So I've got fight odds up. We'll pull it up. Yeah, Silva -152, Bleda +150. Yeah, it's pretty accurate, I guess. So all right, so I like Natalia Silva. I like she's got a pretty complete game. I like what we saw. She was one of those fighters that when she made her UFC debut, she put on a better performance than her tape suggested she was going to. And we see that a lot, right? Like we saw that with Tamir's Vidal, right? Like sometimes I watch tape and I think, what is the UFC thinking? It's this person is not ready to be in the UFC, and then they tend to fight better than I think they're going to. They fight better than they did on the tape. So like obviously the UFC has relationships with these gyms and they know a little bit more than we know. Obviously they dig into it, they make sure that the person's ready. I mean, obviously we see some people in the UFC who maybe shouldn't be there, but they make sure that they vet the people and make sure that they're ready before they come in. And so we sometimes see them have better performances than we think they're going to have, which I think happened with Natalia Silva. She's very athletic, she's very quick, she uses a lot of movement, she strikes well, she has pretty good takedown defense, she's good with subs off of her back, she's got quite a few arm bars off her back and that kind of thing. Teresa Bleda, she's only 20 years old and she doesn't have a lot of experience. She's only got 6 fights, but she's a powerhouse. Like if we look here, she's 5'9", she's 5 inches taller with 6 inches of reach over Silva. Silva's quicker and more athletic, I think, but Bleda is just a big, powerful fighter, and like I said, she is 20 years old. She doesn't have she's still pretty green. The way she kind of, I mean, she's looking to wrestle. She's looking to get a hold of you and drag you to the ground. She's still kind of putting her game together as far as using her strikes to get into for the takedown and that kind of thing. Like she's going to get better and better, but you can still see that her MMA game is still pretty fragmented, I guess I would say. But I did end up betting Bleda here at +160. I think that's pretty good value because I do think Natalia Silva is the better fighter, is the more complete fighter at this point in time. But Bleda has good takedowns. She's got good top control, and she's big and she's powerful. So where I see Bleda potentially struggling here is with Silva's speed and footwork and athleticism. Bleda might have a hard time tracking her down and getting a hold of her. uh, at times. But I think Bleda is going to be able to do a lot of cage pushing here, control Silva against the cage, probably get takedowns. Silva will be looking for arm bars and triangles off of her back. So that is, I thought when I made the bet on Bleda, I thought about potentially hedging with a little bit on Silva by sub, which I haven't done, but I think that's Silva. I see the fight playing out that way, that Bleda is probably going to be able to get a lot of control time here. Silva's going to be looking for subs, but I think Bleda is going to be I think Bleda, as long as she can avoid those subs, I think she wins a decision here. If not, even potentially finds a ground and pound finish late in the fight or something like that. But I do like Teresa Bleda here, probably by decision, and I did bet her. And as always, we'll go through my bets when we get to the end here. I talked about that one longer than I thought I was going to. Fernie Garcia versus Brady Hiestand. I do have a bet on this fight as well. So we see Fernie Garcia. This is at bantamweight. Fernie Garcia 10-2. Brady Hiestand 5-2. Let's take a look at the odds. There are not correct, I don't think. So we see Brady at minus 162, Fernie plus 163. Yeah, this one shows Brady as the underdog. That's not right. Anyway, Fernie Garcia is he's mostly a boxer, to be honest. There's really not a whole lot more. I hate to say that about a mixed martial artist, but there's really not a whole lot more to his game than that, as far as I can see, anyway. He may have skills that go beyond that, but if he does, he doesn't really choose to actively use them. So that could be the kind of thing that we end up seeing later. But mostly he's a boxer, but he's a pretty good one. He is a little bit flat-footed, but he hits hard. He's got nice, nice straight, snappy, hard punches, and he lands with power. Brady Hiestand is more of a wrestler. Um, he's only 23. He's only got 7 fights. He is very green when you see him in there. Kind of like the same things I was saying about Bleda. You can see that Hiestand's game isn't super developed yet, but he's very good at what he does. He's very good at getting the takedowns, being heavy on top, that kind of thing. Um, and this is a fight that I did bet this fight when actually, this might have even been one of those where I put a bet down before I saw the tape. Sometimes I try not to look at the lines until after I'm done with tape, but sometimes I see the lines and I saw that Hiestand was minus 150, minus 155, something like that. And I thought that seemed like a pretty good line, so I took it. But so I do think Hiestand can, Fernie's not too tough to take down. I do think Hiestand can get the takedowns here, and probably, potentially find a submission or just wrestle his way to a decision. The one concern that I have is Hiestand can be pretty hittable. Fernie has a nice check hook that lands, that is quick and lands hard when his opponent is coming in to close distance, and Hiestand can be caught by punches like that. Fernie doesn't knock a lot of guys out, if I remember correctly. I know he hits hard, but I don't think he has a lot of knockouts on his record. So trying to remember if I did. I know when I made that Hiestand bet, I was thinking I think I actually did put a little bit it was kind of the same as the Bleda bet. I bet on Bleda and I was like, I might hedge with a little um on Silva by sub, which I haven't done yet. This one I bet Hiestand, thinking I might hedge with a little on Garcia by KO, because I think that could potentially happen here, and I believe I did put a little bit on that. We'll take a look at that when we get a little further here, but I did bet Hiestand. I think this is a pretty good fight for him as long as he can avoid getting caught and KO'd by Fernie. Next up, we've got Maria Oliveira versus Vanessa Demopoulos. This is at 115 pounds. It's a really close fight. I didn't do a lot of research on this one. I kind of ran out of time with some of my research this week, and this was a fight that, sometimes if I realize I'm not going to have time to tape everything, I can kind of figure out which fights that I'm probably not going to want to bet on anyway. And this was one of those. It's pretty much a coin flip fight. It's a very much a clash of styles, with Oliveira being, a long rangey striker, and Demopoulos being a grappler who doesn't have great wrestling. And she's scrappy on the feet too, but she's not a great technical striker, and she's quite a bit smaller than Oliveira. I'm not going to say much about this fight. Oliveira is, like I said, quite a bit bigger here. She's four inches taller, has 5 inches of reach. She puts out good volume. She's very busy on the feet. She is pretty easy to take down, but she's reasonably good at getting up again. Demopoulos, like I said, is not a great wrestler. While this is on the feet, it's going to favor Oliveira quite a bit. She's got a lot of reach. She puts out a lot of volume. Demopoulos does hit hard. She'll come with those big overhands and that sort of thing when she's trying to close the distance. So, I favor Oliveira on the feet quite a bit, unless Demopoulos is able to land one of those big overhands. On the ground, Demopoulos has a big advantage, but it's a matter of, can she get it there? And if she can she keep it there? I think she will get takedowns here, but I think there's a decent chance that Oliveira will be able to get up and get it back to the feet. Yeah, I don't really have a strong lean here. I'm gonna pick Demopoulos to potentially be able to find a sub late in the fight, but yeah, no strong lean here. No interest in betting this one. If you follow me on Twitter, you probably already know how I feel about this fight. Ricky Turcios versus Kevin Natividad. I did not tape this fight at all. I bet on Ricky Turcios his last time out against Eamon Zahabi. He looked terrible in that fight. It was one of those performances that was so bad that I was like, yeah, I'm just not interested in betting this guy again. I mean, he could do something that changes my mind about that, but he just I was going to say he didn't fight the way the tape said he would. That's not entirely true. I mean, so what happened in the Aman Zahabi fight? I don't have the stats in front of me, but I'm pretty sure this is accurate, reasonably accurate. I remember seeing something about this a while back, but Turcios threw about twice as many strikes. I think it was over twice as many. So he attempted over twice as many strikes as Zahabi did in that fight, and he landed half as many. He only landed like I swear it was like 11% of his strikes or something in that fight. I mean, he was swinging, he was beating up the air in that arena that night. That's for sure. And that is the way he fights anyway, kind of. But it was just a lot. It was a lot more magnified that night. And I just decided when I saw this, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of running out of time to get research done anyway. I was like, I'm not even going to tape this fight because I just don't know what to think about. Like after that last performance, I just need to see. I need to see a couple more Ricky Turcios fights to see if he's working on his issues, to see if he's getting better. I don't know. So I'm staying away from this one. As far as a pick, I picked Turcios by decision, but yeah, I don't really have any strong feelings about that fight at all. So let's go ahead and move on. Next up, we've got Miles Johns versus I almost said Miles Morales. Miles Morales. Is that's Spider-Man, right? The new Spider-Man, Miles Morales, isn't that his name? Anyway, Miles Johns versus Vince Morales at bantamweight. Johns 12-2, Vince Morales 11-6. This shows Miles Johns at minus 145. Let's check fight odds and see what that looks like. Minus 160 for Miles Johns. Come back on Vince Morales plus 157. Those are the best odds out there on fight odds. I don't really have any strong hot takes on this fight either. Vince Morales is mostly a boxer. He puts out pretty good volume. Miles Johns is kind of a classic wrestle boxer style of fighter. He mostly looks to strike. He can wrestle. He doesn't always look to push the wrestling too much, but he does have that ability. He's a very he's a very physical guy. He seems like a very strong fighter in the cage. So like I said, Vince Morales throws more volume than Miles Johns, but Miles Johns hits really hard. He's one of those guys who's capable of producing those kinds of strikes that look really good to the judges, that kind of knock their opponent back and put a little fear in them. How many times have we seen fights where one fighter outlands the other, but they lose because they didn't land the harder shots, right? Um, One that comes to mind, if am I thinking of the right fight? It was Rob Font and Cheeto Vera, right? Didn't she? I'm trying to remember if I make sure I'm getting my memories right on this. Didn't Cheeto outland him in that fight? No, other way around. Yeah, Font landed more strikes, but Cheeto landed the harder strikes. I'm getting it mixed up in my head. But anyway, that's something that we do see sometimes. And this strikes me as possibly one of those situations where Morales might land more, but Johns might land the better strikes that look better to the judges. Um, I don't have a strong read on this one. I don't really see value on the betting lines necessarily. I'm going to pick Miles Johns to win a decision here, but again, no strong feelings about that one really. Next up, we've got Jennifer Maia versus Marina Moroz. Marina Moroz, the first UFC fighter to ever grace the cover of Playboy magazine. We recently learned that was interesting to me to learn. It's also interesting to me that hasn't happened yet, right? Like why didn't Ronda ever get around to doing that? But anyway, we're at flyweight here, 125. Jennifer Maia, 19-9-1. Marina Moroz, the Iron Lady, at 11-3. Let's see. It shows Marina Moroz at minus 175 and Maia at plus 150. I think that's fairly accurate, but Moroz might be a little bit wider. Minus 179. Moroz out there as high as minus 200. Jennifer Maia plus 168. She's around like the plus 150 to 160 range on a lot of books. And I think that line is about right. If you look here, Moroz has 3 inches of height and 3 inches of reach. And so Moroz is, mostly a striker. She's involved with coaching the Ukrainian women's Olympic boxing team. Excuse me if I'm not mistaken. Her background is in boxing. I was reading her Wikipedia page. I can't remember the details, but I think she started boxing when she was really young. I think she started boxing when she was a kid. But she has improved her wrestling and grappling quite a bit. Her wrestling and grappling look pretty good now. I mean, in her last fight with was that her last fight? Maria Agapova? Can't remember if that was actually her last fight or not, but that's the one that's freshest in my mind because I was at that card live, and also I did bet Agapova in that fight, and I ended up looking like a fool because Agapova pretty much got smoked. So yeah, Marina Moroz is one of those fighters. If this fight had been booked like a couple of years ago, or maybe even like a year ago or something, pre-tape, I would have been like expecting Jennifer Maia to be the favorite. But Marina Moroz has really, she's a fighter that I didn't necessarily think highly of not that long ago, but she's starting to come around for me a little bit. I think she's pretty good, and I do think that she probably will win this fight. Um, she's pretty well rounded. Like I said, she's long. She strikes well. She grapples well. She wrestles well. She's kind of a pretty well rounded fighter at this point in her career. Jennifer Maia is a fighter that she's been toward the top of the division for a long time. She fought Valentina. She for the title. She won a round off of Valentina. But Jennifer Maia is a frustrating fighter, right? She's on paper she's supposed to be a grappler, she's supposed to be a good wrestler, and she just never really uses her grappling. She a lot of fights are probably winnable for her if she went to her grappling, but it's so weird how over the years we've seen so many fighters. The one that always comes to mind for me is Jorge Gergel, or George Gergel, however you want to pronounce it. He was the first fighter that I remember as a guy who was a venomous grappler who just fell in love with his hands and never grappled. Unless you want to count Vitor, although we never really saw Vitor be a venomous grappler. But when Vitor first came on the scene, because he used to call himself Vitor Gracie before he called himself Vitor Belfort. When he first came on the scene, when he was like 18, 19 years old, they were selling him as this dangerous BJJ black belt. But then it turned out he had lightning fast, powerful hands, and he never used his grappling. Although he did almost catch John Jones in an armbar. But anyway, I digress. Um, anyway, what I was going to say about Jennifer Maia, she's a frustrating fighter because she doesn't use what is likely her best tool, and she's one of those fighters who just she'll settle into a rhythm and just stay there even if it's not working for her. And that's one of my least favorite qualities in a fighter is when what they're doing. And I mean, you can partially blame their corner for this too, because their corner should be on top of like helping them figure out what adjustments they need to make from round to round. But I hate when a fighter is what they're doing is not working and they just keep doing it anyway, and they do it for 15 minutes or 25 minutes or whatever, and then especially when they act like surprised that they didn't win the decision, it's like, well, you weren't winning the fight. Maia is a fighter who will do that. She will settle into a rhythm that is not working for her, and she will just let it happen and let the fight slip away, and I think that's what's going to happen here. I like Moroz probably to win a decision. I did put Moroz in a parlay, I believe, and we'll take a look at that when we get to the end here. Next up, we've got Zhalgas Zhumagulov versus Charles Energy Johnson. This is one where I don't have a lot of thoughts for you here. I mean, I did watch a little tape on Johnson, but I watched the Mokaev fight. I know he was an LFA champ. I have watched his fight. Was it with Moda? I think. Am I thinking of the right guy? I have watched that fight before, but I didn't rewatch it for tape this time because I kind of ran out of time. So take anything I have with a grain of salt here because I didn't get a great read on Charles Johnson. But one thing that stands out here is Johnson is he's quite a bit big. He's 5 inches taller with 4 inches of reach. He's quite a bit bigger. I feel like this fight on paper is pretty close. And the main thing that stands out to me really is just that Charles Johnson is that much bigger. And Zalgas can tend to slow down a little bit. Are we going to see some wrestling here? Are we going to see Zalgas looking to wrestle and then potentially slowing down and Johnson being able to take over? Um, we show Zalgas at plus 140, Charles Johnson at minus 165. I think that's actually pretty close to where they're still at. Yeah, Charles Johnson minus one. Yep, that's pretty close. And that line feels about right to me. I stayed away from this one. I decided not to bet it. I just want to watch it and learn a little bit more about how Charles Johnson handles himself at this level. As for a pick, I'm going to pick Charles Johnson, let's say by decision. Next up, this should be a super fun fight. Jack Della Maddalena versus Danny Roberts. You got to love Jack Della Maddalena, if for no other reason than look at that man's nose. That is a man that you look at him and you're like, that is a fighter. That is a man who has been in some fights, right? Uh, so Jack Della, 12-2, Danny Roberts, Hot Chocolate, 18-6. Here we're showing Jack Della Maddalena's minus 450 favorite. He's even bigger than that now, I think. Jack Della Maddalena, minus 550 is the best you can get him at now. Wow, he's out there like minus 700, minus eight. Yeah, that's crazy. Danny Roberts plus 529. See, that's crazy to me. Should Jack Della Maddalena win this fight? Absolutely. Absolutely he should. But though that line is him being minus 600, minus 700, minus 800. I just I don't know. I just don't see it. I think it's I suppose the reason for it. Jack Della Maddalena is kind of a hot commodity right now. He's a guy who's on the come up. People think very highly of him, and so do I. I'm not trying to say that I don't, but and Danny Roberts is a guy who can be caught and can be hurt, right? So I think people are seeing this as Jack Della Maddalena is going to come out and spark Danny Roberts out of there. Could that happen? Absolutely. I do think Jack Della Maddalena probably finishes Danny Roberts here, but I'm thinking it might be a little bit later. Actually, I think I bet the over 1.5 here, and I don't know if I love that bet. I had a thought process in mind when I bet that, and now I can't even remember what it was exactly. So now I look at that bet and I'm like, what version of Erik made that bet? Because I don't know if I love it, but yeah, I think Jack Della Maddalena. I think a lot of people are on Maddalena round one KO here. That certainly could happen. I'm leaning more toward Maddalena, maybe like round two KO, something like that. But so Danny Roberts he's quite a bit. Oops, I'm looking at the wrong. Sorry, I was just about to read off some stats, and then I realized I was looking at the wrong one. Okay, he doesn't have that much of a size advantage. I was thinking he's 2 inches taller and has 1 inch of reach. Danny Roberts does. So yeah, he doesn't have that much of a size advantage here. He does potentially have wrestling upside here. He is the better wrestler of the two. Danny Roberts isn't a fantastic wrestler. Jack Della Maddalena, we've seen him deal with some wrestling in his contender series fight against Angelosa. He dealt with some wrestling there. He did get taken down, but he was able to get back up. Um, and Danny Roberts can crack as well. But yeah, like I said, I do see why Maddalena's favorite here. It feels wide to me. I personally probably wouldn't even parlay him at like minus 600, minus 700, minus 800, something like that. And honestly, well, what did we have again for Danny Roberts here? As high as plus 529. I mean, that's getting close to a point where I would almost take a shot on Danny Roberts. Sometimes you just have to let the odds do the work for you. Once it gets too wide, and you hope that somebody slips on a banana peel, right? Like when Mike Jackson fought Dean Barry, I bet Mike Jackson at plus 750. I was like, I don't think Mike Jackson's good. I don't think he's better than Dean Barry. I mean, I don't think Dean Barry's good either. But I was like, when you're dealing with two, obviously these guys aren't that low level, but just as an example, I was like, you're dealing with two low level fighters who don't necessarily have a lot of craft, don't have a real solid like approach to the game, and you're going to give me one of those fighters at plus 750. Like, I'm going to take that because something weird might happen here, and something weird did happen. But yeah, these guys aren't as low level as that. But what I'm saying is, I think these guys are potentially close enough. um, Jack Della Maddalena is the better fighter, but is he the better fighter by a wide enough margin that that he's really worth minus 600, minus 700? I don't think so. And so, if you're playing the value game like that, looking at the numbers, it reaches a point where you just have to take a shot on the underdog and hope that the favorite slips on a banana peel. So yeah, I haven't bet Danny Roberts here. Probably not going to, but man, if it starts to get to like plus 600, plus 700, something like that, I might have to. But I don't think I don't think that line's going to get much wider than it is now. Anyway, enough about that. I'm picking Jack Della Maddalena. Next up, we've got Muslim Salikhov versus Andre Fialho at welterweight. This should be a pretty fun fight. Um, So Muslim Salikhov 18-3, Andre Fialho 16-5. Here it shows Salikhov minus 130, Fialho plus 110. This fight is pretty close to a coin flip on most books, I think. If we look here, yeah, it's like minus 110 to like plus 105 type range for both of them. It varies on different books. You could probably even find an ARB opportunity for a little bit, but you wouldn't be able to get much down on it. But yeah, so the main difference that stands out to me on paper here right away is that Muslim Salikhov is 38 and Andre Fialho is 28. And we always see, they show it on the screen on UFC broadcasts, like when a fighter is 10 years younger, they win like, I don't know what, 68, 70% of the time, something like that. So that's one of those things where you're always trying to decide like how much do I really take that into account in my handicapping. But the main thing that stands out to me in this fight is Salikhov's movement. Andre Fialho, he hits hard, but he's kind of flat-footed, right? He's kind of stationary. He doesn't really use a lot of movement. He doesn't use a lot of footwork. Salikhov is, even though he's 38, he's still fast. Like his spinning back kicks and stuff, the dude is lightning quick and he hits hard. And so I see why this fight is a coin flip. It makes sense to me that it's close, but I ended up betting Salikhov here, and I think I just bet him today. It was something that I put some thought into it. I heard some other cappers breakdowns of the fight, and it ended up just making sense to me that getting Salikhov at a coin flip here was was a good bet. Oh, actually, I bet him by KO. I didn't bet his money line. I bet him by KO, but we'll look at that in a little bit. So, we've seen Fialho get hurt. We saw Fialho get hurt by Cameron Van Camp, even, who is not very good. Fialho can be hittable and he can get hurt. We saw him get hit and get hurt by Jake Matthews a bunch of times in that fight, right? He kept getting hit. And I think Salikhov uses movement well. He has the striking technique, the movement, the speed. He's going to be able to catch Fialho, right? So the more I thought about this fight, the more I thought like I really think Salikhov he's gonna have the upper hand in the striking here with his output, with his movement, with his speed, and I think he's probably going to be able to catch Fialho and put him out at some point. So I do like Salikhov here. Let's say round 2 KO. Next up, we've got Chase Sherman versus Waldo Cortes-Acosta at heavyweight. Um, it's kind of a weird fight, right? Like, I don't know why Cortes-Acosta is coming back so quickly. He just fought Jared Vandera. He won, but it was not really an impressive performance. He got his legs kicked off and didn't seem to know what to do about it. And this was what, 3 weeks ago now, I guess. And so there's the concern that, you know, okay, I'll tell you a story. When I was about 23, I was in a band called Messing with Texas, and we went on a tour over just after Christmas, like over Christmas break. We went on tour, and during that time, I lived in this house. And we had a basement, and I would have parties in the basement a lot. And we used to do gin and juice and pride fighting parties. I was really the only one who was an MMA fan, but I had all these pride DVDs, and I would invite my friends, or basically I'd force them. I'd put pride videos on, and we would drink gin and juice, and so some of my friends, they weren't really like into MMA, but they were kind of into pro wrestling, so they kind of enjoyed the spectacle of it and stuff. But like, and they ended up being like, oh, this is my favorite fighter. I like Igor Vovchanchin and stuff like that. But we me and a friend of mine named Danny, we decided to I let him leg kick me. I let him kick me in the thigh as hard as he could. I just stood there and took it, and he landed right on the sweet spot and dropped me, and it hurt really, really bad. And this band I was in went on tour, like it was like a month later, and sitting in the van on tour, my leg would cramp up and hurt right in that spot where he kicked me. And this was like a month later. It was still bothering me. And so that's why I'm thinking about this. It was just 3 weeks ago. He got his legs kicked up real bad. Like I love it when fighters um tweet out a picture of their thighs after they take a bunch of leg kicks so people can see how damaging it really is. Like, so that's one question I have is, are his legs still, potentially not fully healed from how much they got kicked up in that Jared Vandera fight? But also, even if they are, we saw a clear path to beating Waldo Cortez Acosta with those leg kicks, right? And Chase Sherman's fast. He throws hard leg kicks. He can kick the shit out of Waldo Cortez Acosta's legs too. If Jared Vandera can do it, Chase Sherman can do it. And so to me, like, okay, it shows Chase Sherman plus 170 here. I think he's even like plus 190. Oh, okay. Well, on one book he's plus 225, but that's not really emblematic of the average. But yeah, we're seeing him plus 190, plus 200, that sort of thing. Like, to me, this is a fight that it just doesn't make sense. Chase Sherman being a 2-1 underdog just doesn't make sense to me here. Do I think Chase Sherman is a better fighter than Waldo Cortez Acosta? I don't know, not necessarily. But what I'm saying is, we saw a clear path to beating Waldo Cortez Acosta, even though, I mean, like I said, Vandera didn't beat him, but those leg kicks, Sherman's going to be able to kick Cortez Acosta's legs. Sherman is, I think part of the reason the line is the way it is here is just because people like to shit on Chase Sherman. He's kind of a heavyweight whipping boy. He's what, like 4-10 in the UFC or something. He doesn't have a great record, but he's not as much of a scrub as people want to make him out to be, in my opinion. He does have some mental issues, I think, as far as he can kind of be taken out of a fight. He doesn't have a lot of confidence in himself all the time. When he's confident, he looks really good, but sometimes it seems like he's sort of doubting himself and can't really find his way into the fight. But whatever, I don't want to get into that. My point being that I think this fight is probably pretty close to a coin flip. Or I guess I could see calling Cortes-Acosta like a minus 120, minus 125 favorite or something like that. But to me, I had to take a shot on Chase Sherman here because the line just doesn't make sense. Um, that this is, I think it's a very winnable fight for Chase Sherman. I ended up betting him at plus 160, and now the line's up at plus 190. And I'm like, man, I don't really want to put like several units on Chase Sherman, but I almost feel like I need to double down or something because I do think this is a winnable fight for him. So I'm even going to pick it. I'm going to pick Chase Sherman to, let's say, get the round 3 KO here. Let's say he's going to eat up those legs for a while. My kitty wants to come in. Just one second. Welcome in, buddy. So yeah, let's go Chase Sherman, round 3. I got to do it for the culture. I know Lou and Patrick from Addicted to Combat, some of the homies still bring up that I picked Chase Sherman round 3 against Jared Vandera. So we're going to do it again. Chase Sherman round 3 KO. Next up, we've got Iwan Cutelaba versus Kennedy and Nzechukwu. This fight at whoops, I got my notes in the wrong order here, or I've got the fights I got something in the wrong order anyway. I'm not sure which is in the wrong order here, but fights at 205. We see Iwan Cutelaba, the Hulk, 16-8-1, Kennedy Nzechukwu 10-3. This is showing Kennedy at minus 170 and Cutelaba at plus 145. Yeah, I guess that's about right. Kennedy minus 160. He's out there at like minus 180, minus 190. The best you can find on Cutelaba is plus 155. One thing that stands out right away here is the massive size difference. I mean, Kennedy's about as big as you can get at light heavyweight, right? He's 6'5" with an 83-inch reach. If I remember correctly, I think John Jones has the longest reach in UFC history at 84.5 inches. So he's only an inch and a half below the longest reach in UFC history, which has always blown my mind because John Jones is what, 6'4" probably. We've had my brain is like not working today. Why can't Stefan Struve, who, they first built him at 6'11. They eventually decided he was 7 feet tall. I don't think he just randomly grew. I think they just thought it sounded cool to say he was 7 feet tall. But we've had Stefan Struve at 7 feet tall. We've had Gan McGee at what? He was 6'10, 6'11. We've had Semi Schilt, who was like 6'11. Obviously Tim Sylvia, who was 6'8. Dan, what was that guy's name? Dan Christensen, the Sandman. He was 6'8". We've had a lot of Jack May. He was like 6'9", 6'10". We've had a lot of fighters in the UFC who have been like 6'10" to 6'11" type height, and none of them have had a longer reach than the 6'4" John Jones. I just think that's kind of interesting. Anyway, I went off on a long tangent there. So this fight, I'm not going to say a ton about it. We know who Iwan Cutelaba is at this point. He calls himself the Hulk. He fights like the Hulk. He comes out trying to rip your head off, and if he can't do it, his game falls apart pretty quickly. What's not to love, right? The guy's a lot of fun to watch. He's just aggressive, and I saw somebody on Twitter saying that he's real dumb. Like, he fights like he is. He fights like Hulk Smash, so it makes sense that is his nickname. But I think Cutelaba is going to come out here like a bat out of hell. He's going to look to finish Nzechukwu early. He's probably going to have some early success, but if he's not able to get him out of there in round 1, Nzechukwu's size is just going to wear on him because Cutelaba is going to be trying to take him down. Most likely, he's going to be trying to control and take down a bigger guy. Cutelaba doesn't have the greatest gas tank. I think he's going to start to slow down, and we'll see Kennedy start to take over. So if Cutelaba doesn't find that round 1 finish, I like Nzechukwu to potentially finish him in round 2. So that's what I'm going to pick. Nzechukwu round 2 KO, let's say. Although, we saw Kennedy do some pretty effective wrestling and grappling his last time out against, was it Carl Robertson? And so, I wouldn't be surprised if he found a sub here either. He could be looking to wrestle, getting on Cutelaba's back, that kind of thing. And finally, we've got the main event. I think I missed a fight. Did I? Okay, I don't remember if this fight is still on the card. I'm going to talk about it briefly. I've got in my notes Cody Brundage versus Rodolfo Vieira. I don't know if did that get removed from the card or something. I think maybe it did. I'm going to break it down very, very quickly. I don't have much to say about it. In the Trayshawn Gore fight, Cody Brundage specifically said that he knew Gore was somebody who would tend to gas, and he was going to try to make him gas. So I just want to say, maybe he's got that same approach here. If this fight is still happening, I can't remember if it is. Vieira has shown gas tank issues. He has potentially shored up those issues, but I'm not sure yet. I'm not entirely convinced of that yet. I don't really have a strong feeling on this fight. I think it comes down to, Vieira is obviously a great grappler. He lacks a little bit on the takedowns. He went 0 for 20 on takedowns against Chris Curtis. It comes down to, can Vieira get the takedowns here? And if he can't, is he going to tire out? I don't know. So yeah, I don't know why I bothered breaking it down, because I don't have a ton to say on this fight anyway. I think it comes down to, can Brundage stuff Vieira's takedowns, and potentially, I don't think either guy is a super technical striker, but they do both have power. Brundage can land and get you out of there. So could Brundage potentially land something early, or even tire Vieira out and land something late? I don't know, but that's all I have to say about that one. That fight must not be happening. I don't know. All right. Anyway, the main event, the heavyweight tilt between Derrick Lewis and Serghei Spivac. We see Derrick Lewis at 26-10, Spivac 15-3. We're seeing Serghei as -175 favorite. Come back on Derrick Lewis +150. It is actually wider than that now, I think. Spivac, best you can find him for is -185. He's out there like -200, -220. Derrick Lewis, the best you can find him for is +185. He's more like, +160, +170 range on most books. In a way, it's kind of an easy fight to break down, but I think it's a difficult fight to predict, right? Like, we know we for the most part we know what each guy is going to look to do here. Derrick Lewis is a guy who's very low volume, very high power. The story on him tends to be that he's going to find the KO early, but we've also seen him, we know he can carry that power late. I mean, look what he did to Alexander Volkov. He knocked him out on the last few seconds of that fight. He's very he definitely becomes slower and lower volume as the fight goes on, but he's already pretty like kind of slow and low volume early in the fight. Well, I shouldn't say he's slow. He actually has pretty surprising athleticism for a guy of his size, right? I mean, he does those flying knees and stuff, and he'll even throw like jumping head kicks and stuff. Like, he's pretty athletic for a massive guy. But this fight largely comes down to, can Derrick Lewis find the button on Serghei Spivac, or is Spivac going to be able to take Derrick Lewis down and control him? And I don't know. Like I said, that's the breakdown, but like I don't really feel confident in the answer to that. I don't, Spivak being like a 2-1 favorite here. I think that this is a spot where it starts to make sense, as far as the numbers, that a shot on Derrick Lewis at like +180 kind of makes sense to me. But this is also a spot that you could potentially look to bet it live, kind of see how that first round plays out. But for me, from a money line perspective, if I was going to bet it before, pre-flop, I would be looking to Derrick Lewis there, because I think it's potentially a pretty close fight. Because yeah, Spivak's going to be looking to wrestle, but Lewis is huge and strong. We do have the 10-year age difference here too, with Lewis being 37 and Spivak being 27, but I'm not even going to take that into account too much. But Spivak's going to look to wrestle, especially early. Lewis is obviously just a huge, strong, powerful guy. He can be taken down, but he also, the classic way people talk about it is he eventually just decides, well, I'm going to get up, and he'll just bench press you off of him and just stand up. He does also give his back while he's doing that, which isn't a great thing to do to Spivak. But, and honestly, I don't think remember when Derrick Lewis decided he was an All-American? I don't think Derrick Lewis is a terrible wrestler. He has some, he does have some wrestling, both offensively and defensively. I think it tires him out to use it, but I don't think he's a terrible wrestler. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to my official prediction is going to be Derrick Lewis to find that KO early, because we know that Spivak can be gotten out of there early. I mean, Tom Aspinall did it. But yeah, I don't really have a strong feeling about how this fight is going to play out. Like, can Lewis find that button? Spivak, and the way Spivak wrestles, he tends to be more like Greco style, right? He's going to get in and body lock with you and look for an upper body takedown, look for a trip, look for that kind of thing, which is like I said, tough to do. Like Derrick Lewis is a strong dude to try to be doing that with, right? To be tussling with in that way. He's very strong, very powerful. He's going to be difficult to control in that way. And also, when you're in there, I mean, Derrick Lewis, obviously, the man's got big uppercuts. He's got big hooks. Even when you're in close with him clinching like that, I mean, he can be landing big shots even inside, like in that position, right? So Spivac is going to be in a lot of danger here. You know, if Spivac can get him to the ground, he is good on top. He does have good ground and pound from top. You know, so um, you know, even though like we say about Lewis, he tends to just kind of stand up at some point. He usually hangs out for a while before he does that. How long can you hang out on bottom against Spivac before Spivac is able to put you away with ground and pound? I don't know. We'll find out. But I'm going to pick Derrick Lewis, but it's not a particularly confident pick. I don't have a bet on this fight, but I may end up betting Derrick Lewis. I don't know. We'll see. And oh, here's a funny thing. So after I did the tape, I was like, oh, I want to see what Lewis's KO prop is, and I was like, it's probably only going to be a few cents more. When I first saw it on Bet Online, Lewis's money line was plus 170. His KO prop was plus 180. Eventually, I don't know if they fixed this. Eventually on Bet Online, Lewis's money line was plus 181, and his KO prop was still plus 180. So that was kind of funny. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the bets I've got locked in for this card currently. I went a little heavier than usual. I've been doing a lot of 1 unit or to win 1 unit on my money line plays. Especially these two dog spots that I liked quite a bit. I went a unit and a half on Chase Sherman at plus 160 because I just liked that line. Um, Brady Hiestand at minus 156. I did 3.12 to win 2. And Teresa Bleda, I went a full 2 units. So, I'm either I'm live by the sword, die by the sword here with these money line plays. I could lose pretty big on these, so we'll see how it goes. But I went with kind of a weird little. I like Bleda's line so much here, and I do think it's a winnable fight for her if it goes the way she needs it to. So I got a little crazy here. Della Maddalena at minus 420. I still already a pretty crazy line, but I caught him before he got too out of hand. Bleda at plus 160. Hiestand at minus 150. I parlayed them together at plus 437. I put half a unit on that. Like I said, since I've got such a big play, 3.12 units on Hiestand, I did do a little bit of a hedge here because I think Garcia could potentially catch him for the KO, which was at plus 550. So I put 0.6 units on that at plus 550 as just like a hedge for this big play here. Jack Della Maddalena and Danny Roberts, I bet it over 1.5 rounds, 1 unit at plus 105. And like I said, I'm not so sure that I like that bet anymore. I had a reason. I had like a thought process in mind when I made that bet, but because I was thinking like, Maddalena's not going to get him out of there in round 1, but he might. So I don't know. I did decide today that I was going to bet Salikhov, but then I thought, screw it. I'm going to just make a small play on his KO prop rather than making a bigger play on his money line, which is more or less, at a coin flip. So I put a half a unit at plus 225, and then I did put together this little parlay. Kennedy Nzechukwu at minus 185, Marina Moroz at minus 180. They came out to plus 140. I put 3/4 of a unit on that. So that's it, gang. That's all I've got for you. That's UFC Vegas 65. Good luck on all of your bets this weekend. If you decide to make any plays, I am Erik with Erik Bets Fights. You can find me on Twitter at Erik Bets Fights, on Instagram at Erik_Bets_Fights. Be sure to like and subscribe right here on Erik Bets Fights YouTube, or if you're watching on Never Hedge Media, make sure to like and subscribe there and crisscross between the two. If you like one and not the other, or subscribe to one and not the other, make sure you do both. Help us out here getting the word out. I also post my my tape study notes for every UFC card on the Never Hedge Media Substack newsletter. I think I might have the link for that down in the description below here, but if not, all you have to do is search Never Hedge Substack and it will come up. But thanks as always for watching my videos, folks. I am Erik with Erik Bets Fights, reminding you to play it smart, play it tight, and let's grow those bankrolls. Good luck on your bets this weekend and enjoy the fights at UFC Vegas 65. We are out.